Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Coffey, the president of Louisville Forum. Welcome to our January 2025 program. The Louisville Forum programs typically meet at noon on the second Wednesday of each month here at Vincenzo's Restaurant downtown. All are welcome. Founded in 1984, 40 years ago, the Louisville Forum is a nonpartisan public interest issues group. We host debates and discussions of contemporary and sometimes controversial public policy issues that affect the greater Louisville community. For more information on the Louisville Forum, our events, to join or to make a reservation, please visit louisvilleforum.org. Fire safety in Louisville. On Tuesday, November 12th, 2024, is actually, we were having an event the very next day, and a lot of the press that we're going to be covering our November event couldn't be here because of what happened. A tragic explosion at the does anyone know how to pronounce this? Okay, that. That Sense Color plant in the Clifton neighborhood killed 2 people, hospitalizing at least 3 other people and injuring a dozen more. Some of you know some of the people and families who were harmed. It was a really terrible event we had in Louisville that day. 20 years ago, that exact same site, a similar explosion happened and killed someone. There are an almost endless number of questions. How and why did this happen again? How to make sure this is the last time? What impact does an explosion like this have on a neighborhood? How long until it's safe again, and what other hazards does it cause? Of course, between this November explosion and today, the number one news story this year has been the deadly fires raging in California. So a contemporary and hot topic, really glad that we have today to talk about the tragedy that happened here in Louisville and to answer some questions about the most important news events we have going on both here in Louisville and the nation, our Louisville Fire Chief. Sitting right next to me, Brian O'Neill. Chief O'Neill joined the Louisville Fire Department in 2001. He was promoted to sergeant in 2005, captain in 2010, and eventually to the rank of major, which is battalion chief, in 2022, before being appointed the fire chief of the Louisville Fire Department on August 1st, 2023. As fire chief, he leads a 500-member department with 21 stations housing 26 fire companies. During his tenure with the Louisville Fire Department as a member of the International Association of Firefighters, IAFF, Chief O'Neill was elected as Secretary-Treasurer in 2009 and President in 2013, where he served until he was appointed Fire Chief. He also served as IAFF 8th District Field Service Representative and Facilitator for the IAFF Labor Management Alliance. Additionally, he served as both the District Vice President and Legislative Director of the Kentucky Professional Firefighters. Chief O'Neill is a graduate of Takes Creek High School in Lexington, earned his bachelor's in history from the University of Louisville, and served in the United States Marine Corps for 8 years. He and his wife Carmen have been married since 2000 and have 3 grown children. I'm not going to talk about his children, but I encourage you to take a look at Chief O'Neill's bio on the webpage because his children are all doing some pretty impressive things. Everyone, please give Chief O'Neill a warm welcome here this morning. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you so much for being here and for asking me to join you. I see a lot of familiar and friendly faces and some others that I hope to get to know. So I'm going to give you just kind of a little down and dirty about the Louisville Fire Department and about firefighters in general. Oftentimes what I find talking to the public is that people are aware that the fire department's out there, but they don't really understand everything that we do. And also a lot of reason that you would have to take pride in the fact that you are here in Louisville with the Louisville Fire Department. So LFD was formed in 1858. So we are actually the 3rd oldest professional fire department in the country. Prior to that, most fire departments were all volunteer. And then the bigger cities started becoming actually paid professionals. Cincinnati is actually the first paid professional fire department in the country. We were number 3. As I mentioned, we have about a 500-member department, 26 companies at 21 stations. We have 3 different bureaus that kind of do the main function of that. Everybody thinks about fire suppression and the firefighters that are out there on the front line, which is our largest area, but we also have a fire prevention bureau that goes out and does a lot of inspections to try to prevent the fires from happening in the first place, and our line firefighters are involved in that process as well. We are always trying to put ourselves out of business. We don't want to have to make house calls, but we will if we are called. We also have an arson bureau, and in fact, the Louisville Arson Bureau provides arson to the entire county, and will also go out of county if requested. But they are, and I have to brag, we have one of the finest arson bureaus in the nation. If you think about it, arson, that crime, almost everything is destroyed after the crime has been committed. So actually trying to track down and being able to prosecute in a court of law, extremely difficult, and our arson bureau has one of the highest closure rates in the country. They do really, really good work. Louisville, what we protect, we are the old urban service district. So if you want to just kind of get it loose, it's about like the Waterson Inn, although we do go outside of the Waterson in a few areas. But we are the old city of Louisville is what we provide. Outside of that, you have one other fire department and several fire protection districts that kind of make up what we refer to as the county fire department. Despite how things might have been 20, 30 years ago, we all work very closely now. We train together because the fact is that fire burns and fire burns. Whether it's in the county or in the city, we are doing the same type of response. So we work closely with our brothers and sisters out there to make sure that we are giving the best possible service wherever that response might be. Within the city of Louisville, the Urban Service District, we have 45 miles of interstate. We have 10 miles of the Ohio River. For those of you that don't know, the Ohio River does belong to Kentucky, so it is ours all the way to the opposite shore. So that means that everything that happens on the Ohio River here when it comes to public safety is the Louisville Fire Department's responsibility. So we have marine firefighting, we have swiftwater rescue, we also have dive rescue. That also means that the bridges are ours as well. So any response on the bridges, that's us. There's about 210,000 vehicle crossings every day on those bridges. That's what the fire department protects. We also have an extensive railway network that comes through the city, which provides an additional hazard that we always have to be aware of and that we're prepared for. So when we talk about that, we are an all hazards response organization. So not only do we fight fires, which is the typical one that you think of, but we have many other specialty disciplines. Now, this past year, you mentioned, I always get the pronunciation wrong. I think of the region of France, Gévaudan, but the sense color, that explosion, one of the things that was brought forth there is not just, the initial structural firefighting, but we were also dealing with a hazardous materials response. We were also dealing with a structural collapse. So we had to put a lot of those skills to use at that time. Many may have seen that it got a little bit of press. There was a bridge rescue about a year ago. That's another example of our special rescue team that was out there. And then also on downtown by the hospitals, there was a worker that unfortunately fell into a hole, got buried. And again, that's our trench rescue, structural collapse rescue that we're able to get in there and effect the rescue and get him out of there. So we have, marine firefighting, swiftwater rescue, dive rescue, high angle rescue, that's ropes and things like you saw on the bridge rescue, hazardous materials, trench collapse, confined space, structural collapse, EMS, and arson and fire prevention. When you look at EMS, although we are firefighters, we are all nationally registered EMTs. So about 2/3 of our runs are actually medical runs. So if somebody were to call 911 for a medical emergency, oftentimes the firefighters can get there faster. So we're going to get there, help stabilize the patient, and as soon as an ambulance is there, we'll hand off to the ambulance so they can take care of that. As I said, about 60% of our runs are medical runs. However, if you look at our time on scene, about 60% of our time on scene are on our structural, our more specialty and our fire runs, because those are a lot more complex. What do we do? So when you think about the fire department, what does the fire department do? Ultimately, if you want to winnow it down to one simple thing, we mitigate disaster. Somebody is having their worst day. It is a situation that they cannot deal with. So they call 911 and we come and try to make it better. If you think, most people, when they think, I need law enforcement, I need a cop right now, they're going to call, they need a cop. They're thinking, I need an ambulance because this is going on, I need an ambulance, they call and they're going to get an ambulance. They're also going to get a fire truck. But if you think of everything else that doesn't fall into that easy category of police or EMS, that's the fire department. And oftentimes our dispatchers down right over here at Metro Safe, about a block and a half away, they do an amazing, amazing job. But sometimes they're like, we'll just send the fire department and they'll figure it out. because that's what we do. You could take 2 of our firefighters, give them a box of tools, throw them in an old beat-up pickup truck, send them, and they'll figure it out. They're really, I cannot brag enough about the men and women of the Louisville Fire Department. I have no doubt in my mind that they are the finest firefighters in the world, and I'll fight anybody that says otherwise. They do amazing work, really. And we're supported, of course, by a tremendous network here in the city. So when we look at what are our needs to keep doing what we do, you saw firsthand some great national media on some very successful rescues, whether it was the bridge rescue with the truck hanging off the side, whether it was the collapse where we had a fire, a construction worker that was trapped in gravel and debris, and we were able to successfully get him out. And sometimes it's not. This isn't the movies. It's not TV. We can't save everybody. It doesn't always work that way. And you look at like the explosion at Gévaudan, Sense Color, and unfortunately we had 2 fatalities there. But again, our firefighters responded very rapidly, very quickly. They were able to enter immediately. They were able to get 1 person out. Another person was trapped in an area that just was not tenable and we weren't able to get to until later in the day. But again, these are the things that this past year has really highlighted, all the multifaceted things that the fire department does. So what do we need? We need continued investment in the fire department. We're very fortunate. My boss, Deputy Mayor David James, is here. Mayor Greenberg has made a priority to public safety. And I can tell you, after doing this for 24 years, a lot of times when you hear public safety, what they really mean is law enforcement. And the fire department kind of gets forgotten. But that is not the case with this administration. They've been great about investing, and we're very fortunate. We've had investments in our training, which, as you see, we need. Because when it comes to that specialty training and the equipment that we need, it happens. And the mayor's been great about making sure to get us that investment. We need continued investment in our apparatus and our firehouses, and that's happening. So again, that needs to continue. We need help with recruiting, and I'm so fortunate to have Ms. Dykstra here that is going to be helping us with that, with recruiting. We have a lot of people that look like me that maybe are related to people in the fire department. They're like, yep, I want to be a firefighter. I have no shortage of those. And despite what you may hear about DEI hiring and how we're not lowering our standards at all, but there are many pockets of our community that never thought about the fire department. And those are the people we need to reach. If we think about our immigrant community in this town, I want them to see themselves in this uniform. And they maybe came from a country where the people that wear uniforms like this are not the good guys. So we want to make sure that we're reaching into those communities, and we need help. We need help. There's no false humility here. I will accept help from anybody and everybody. But we want to reach those folks and let them know that, hey, there is a place for you in this fire department. The strengths of the fire department is our people. Fire trucks are expensive, but they're cheap compared to our people. Fire stations are expensive, but they're cheap compared to our people. It's the people, it's the training, and again, I will tell you, we have a tremendous fire service here. The men and women go through an over 6-month academy. They become nationally registered EMTs. They become hazardous material technicians. They become rope rescue technicians, and they become basically trained firefighters with over 400 hours that they then need to keep up over 100 hours of training every year. In the midst of all the runs that we make. We have over 50,000 runs a year just here in the city, and oftentimes that's multiple apparatus, so you're really talking about nearly 75,000 unit responses. So we're busy. We are very busy, but we say bring it on, and we're always ready for more. When I say ready for more, we're seeing tremendous investment in the city of Louisville that we're very excited about. I was watching the forum from last month where you had, the senator and the representative here talking about the investment in Louisville, and we're here for it. And we're prepared. We're always involved when it comes to planning, when it comes to new construction, making sure that we're involved so we know the types of hazards we're going to have to face and so that we're ready to face them. So I guess now I will take some questions. I think some people are turning them in. And I will encourage you, ask me anything. I'm not afraid to talk about any discussion, even if it is LA wildfires, although that's not us. I can talk a little bit about the wildland urban interface and what that looks like. You name it, I'll talk to you.
Let's start with the LA wildfires. It's put a spotlight on what appears to be an underfunded fire department. You've expressed similar concerns here, not to that degree, and you've said that the current administration is trying to fix that. But where are you now as far as equipment, personnel, funding, and what needs to be done?
Okay, so when it comes to equipment personnel, we're doing well. We currently have about 32 vacancies in the fire department, which is not a huge number when you're talking about a 500-member department. And we are getting ready to start our next academy class. That'll be starting like February, March. We're kind of getting to the end. We're going to hire about 30 people. So we're right there at about keeping balance. So we're good on that. When you look at our apparatus, we have an aging fleet of fire engines and fire trucks. Real quick, this question came up out there. A fire engine has hoses and water. A fire truck is much bigger, has ladders and tools. But if you want to say truck or engine, we get it. You can say whatever, but for us in our world, engines and trucks, when you look at those, we're hurting on those because they're getting old. We have an aging fleet, and when you think about our auxiliary fleet, that's also where we're harmed. We did not get here overnight, and if suddenly the Metro Council said, okay, we'll give you $80 million and get brand new fire trucks, well, that would be a problem too, because then in 15 to 20 years, they would all be going out of style at the same time and falling apart at the same time. So what we need is a responsible plan, and that's what we've worked with the mayor's office as well as with OMB. In fact, I had a meeting with them just yesterday about this to slowly replace as best we can. Many of you probably saw that there was a surplus that was a mid-year surplus, and we were able to purchase a few fire apparatus with that. We're going to get 2 new engines and a truck. Part of the problem with that is if I order a fire truck today, I won't get it for almost 3 years. And that is not just like one provider, that's all of them. It is an extremely slow process to get a fire apparatus. So it's just unfortunately the way it is. They're not cheap, they're expensive. There's not much of a market for used fire apparatus. In fact, most of the used fire apparatus are the stuff that we've worn down to death, and we're going to either donate or sell for a very low price to like a rural fire department that just desperately needs anything that they can get their hands on. But when you're looking at a place like this, like the city of Louisville, that is going to be, those apparatus are going to be running constantly day in and day out. We need the newer stuff. So we're hurting on that, but we're moving in the right direction. Similarly, we've got some good investment in repairing our fire stations. Again, if you think about a building like this, in the evenings and in the week, well, maybe not evenings and weekends at a restaurant, but like an office building, it throttles down. Firehouse, we live there 24/7. It's never throttling back. And we have 7 of our houses are over 100 years old, another 11 that are over 50 years old. We're proud of that tradition, but we also have to live there for 1/3 of our lives. So we're keeping up on it and just slowly moving forward to get the repairs and the renovations that we need.
Thank you for coming, Chief.
Thank you.
And to lighten things up a little, is it true, or how do you all decide who cooks?
So this is actually, so when you think about our fire stations, we call them a firehouse because we do live there. This has been an adjustment for me and probably even a bigger adjustment for my wife because for 20 plus years, I was gone for 24 hours at a time and then I come home for 2 days. So you won 1 day off for 2 days. And if that day happens to be your kid's birthday or your anniversary or Christmas, well, you just missed it that year. And when the kids were little, I'd just say, before they could read a calendar, I was like, oh, guess what? It's Christmas. And they didn't know, right? So we just celebrate whenever we tell them. So the cooking rotation actually is very important, but it really means something when you think about a group of people together that are shopping together, preparing food for each other, feeding each other. That's part of that bond that's grown. Traditionally, the captain that's in charge of the firehouse does not cook just because they're busy with a lot of other administrative duties, but oftentimes they'll jump in and take a turn. But it's just a rotation. So if you don't know how to cook, you're going to learn. Hopefully you do. First firehouse I got to, that was the first question my new captain asked. He's like, all right, welcome here. Do you know how to cook? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, we'll see. But no, everybody takes their turn, and it is a great tradition.
One of the main issues from the Los Angeles City fires was the low water pressure or lack of water, in some cases, from the hydrants. How do you test to make sure the pressure is there to handle emergencies here in Louisville?
Sure. So one of the things that we do, and the Louisville Water Company does an amazing job, and of course we are fortunate we're right here on the river, so water supply is really just not an issue for us when it comes to having water. We even have a backup. If all the water mains were broken, we have areas where we can draft water even from the river if need be. So that's not an issue. But what we do on a regular basis is we have what's called a target hazard. So every company will routinely go out and pick like a structure a commercial structure that they're going to do inspections, they're going to walk through, take a look at the size of the structure, what the fire load is. So in other words, is this like a warehouse that's full of a lot of stuff, which is going to require a harder time if it does catch fire. And what they'll do when they do that is they will fire up the 3 fire hydrants that are closest to that area to check the pressure. They'll fire up the main fire hydrant first, see what the pressure is, and then when you fire up 2 other hydrants and start flowing water, you see what we call the residual pressure. So in other words, now that a lot more water is taking away from where that main hydrant is, do you still have adequate residual pressure? So we do this throughout the city, not at this time of year, obviously, but once it warms up in the spring, summer, and fall, we're doing those types of inspections to make sure that we've got adequate water pressure. And again, Louisville Water Company does a great job from the get-go of keeping that. If you see in my neighborhood in Old Louisville, they're tearing up those streets, which is an inconvenience, but it's well worth it as they're fixing water mains.
What kinds of challenges are presented to you with these extremely low temperatures as you get called to a scene?
So with extremely low temperatures like this, and I've fought several fires in temperatures like this, and I will tell you they're miserable. But it's better than the heat because you can warm up. It's really hard to cool down. But when you're dealing with this, one of the things that you start dealing with is once you start flowing water, when it's this bitter cold, like overnight it was down to like 2 degrees, water freezes really, really fast. Now, that doesn't mean it's freezing as it's coming out of the jets. No, as we're there hosing down, fighting the fire, it's not freezing that quickly. But any of the residual runoff starts freezing very quickly. The apparatus operators that are out by the fire engines and trucks start having basically a skating rink out there, which is dangerous. So we do keep buckets full of salt that are on there so they can start spreading that immediately so that it doesn't freeze up right on top of them. Barring that, we can take gravel to throw down just so you have some kind of traction. The other thing is you'll see it on our gear. As we get wet in there, you step outside, you have icicles coming off your helmet, coming off your gear kind of freezes, you have to kind of crunch and break it off. So what it does, it's very similar, in fact, to when it is extremely hot, is that we need to have a rehab bus that comes, and we can actually have a deal with TARC as well. They'll bring buses so we can get people on there to warm back up, because while you're in there, you're inside the fire, you're fighting the fire, you're plenty warm. That insulation in our fire coat that protects us from extreme heat, it also keeps us warm. Which is, again, why it's kind of bad when it's really, really hot outside, because it holds that heat in and you're not getting cooler. But you can go ahead, once you're after, think about it, fighting a typical fire, like you think of a basic residential structure fire, we can put it out in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes, unless it starts getting really big, really big. But we're still going to be there on scene for hours, doing cleanup, checking for extension, tearing walls out to make sure there's no embers back there, tearing ceilings out, and then clearing all that out of the structure. That's when it gets really cold, and that's where we need to rotate people in and out to make sure that we're not harming our firefighters.
You mentioned briefly some of your non-fire duties. Question about the decision to shut down the Streetery as a homeless shelter. What went into that decision? And talk about your role, the fire department's role in doing that.
Sure. Well, first of all, just to be clear, we did not shut down the Streetery. We don't shut places down. They are a restaurant, and they continued to operate as a restaurant, and they were open to welcome as many people as they wished, so they can get warmed up. But what you look at is any entity within Louisville has what they call a certificate of occupancy. What are you open to do? And you can't take a restaurant and suddenly say, hey, we're also going to be an overnight shelter. That's a very different set of codes and regulations, which is actually a different department. What are considered as life safety. But there are all kinds of rules and regulations that have been designed by years and years of experience about what a business can or can't do and how they go about doing that. If you take a library and suddenly say, hey, we're going to be a nursing home tonight, or we're going to be a pharmacy starting tomorrow, you just can't do that safely. And so here's the thing. When you look at a place that is not designed to have beds, that's not designed to have overnight occupancy, you might think, hey, this seems like a very good move for the immediate. But what happens that night if there's a fire and people cannot adequately get out, and now we've killed 6 to 8 people? So now you've removed people from one dangerous situation to put them in another extremely dangerous situation. So what did happen with that, despite what the media might have taken out, was that as soon as we found out about it, our fire inspectors went out there, spoke with the owners. The owners of the Streetery restaurant were very helpful, very great at working with us. Our sergeant that was out there, she explained to them, said, hey, if you're wanting to do these things, here's the people that you need to contact, here are the steps that you need to take. Metro Louisville also has tremendous resources, and a lot of the homeless shelters were open. In fact, none of them were full that night. They had set up with RCS and homeless services to make sure that they gave rides to anybody that needed a ride to get to a homeless shelter. I think they picked up over 50 people that day in that bitter cold to get them there. But again, the biggest thing with us is when it comes to our inspection, our Fire Prevention Bureau, is through years and years of experience, they see, hey, how is it safe to run different occupancies, make sure they have adequate fire exits, make sure that they have adequate sprinkler systems, make sure that they have stairways. I'll give you an example. Some other states right now are starting to allow large apartment buildings to be built with a single stairwell, and that's it. So now and of course what they're thinking is they want more space because then they can put more occupancy in there and they can make more money. But when it comes to an emergency, we're trying to fight that to make sure it's like, look, if there's an emergency, we need multiple ways for people to get out.
You discussed EMS being part of the fire department and a fire truck going first because often they're closer. Does sending a fire engine for medical purposes not seem wasteful? And are you looking at keeping smaller vehicles at each fire station for medical emergencies?
So when you think about that, that would require, well, let's back up. No, it is not a bad idea to send a fire engine, because I promise you, when you have that person that has been shot or stabbed or has been hit by a car or is experiencing a stroke or a heart attack, we are all EMTs. We have the medical kits, we have the oxygen, we have the AEDs to provide immediate care and stabilize that patient quickly. If you're thinking that, okay, it's a great big apparatus that's having to roll, why not do something smaller? One of the things, like we mentioned earlier, this actually ties in with the question about cooking. If you see us at the store, anywhere we go, the 4 people on that apparatus are going to be within shouting distance of each other for 24 hours. Because at any moment that 911 call comes, they have to be able to move as a team and respond immediately. So if we were to somehow break off into a smaller vehicle and take something else, that would mean hiring extra personnel, or it would mean breaking up the company, and that's just not a good idea. We want to stay together as best we can. So when you see us shopping at the store, it's because we're all together. If somebody has to run an errand, we're all going on that errand, because you have to be together and ready to respond at all times.
How does your department help downtown businesses have or create fire safety training for their employees, especially for those in older downtown buildings?
So we do a lot of outreach to get out and try to just help with any type of fire safety education. It's not just in schools. It's also in elder care facilities. It's in businesses as well. So we try to reach out whenever we can to do that. And of course, the phones work both ways, so please call us anytime. And we are happy to send a fire company out, to send a fire inspector out, to talk about safety, to talk about exit drills, to help with, especially for businesses. If you're concerned with some of the codes, if you're concerned with safety within your business, we will help with that, and we'll point out anything that we can do. I tell you, our Fire Prevention Bureau is headed up by our Fire Marshal, Lieutenant Colonel Brian Muir. They do amazing work. Their knowledge of all the building codes, safety codes, and things like that is just amazing. And we're more than happy to get out there and try to help with that. And so we are a big part of that. We mentioned all the types of businesses and everything that the transportation that comes through Louisville, and we're here to protect that. Again, we are in the business of trying to put ourselves out of business. We want to make sure that you don't have to call us. We want to make sure that you don't have that emergency.
How have the changes to the Kentucky pension program affected your recruitment and retention efforts?
So just to get quick down and dirty, if you're an old timer like me, you are in what's called Tier 1, which was 20 years and out. In 2008, they changed that to 25 years and out. And then in 2014, they changed it to what they call Tier 3, which is a cash balance hybrid. The 25 and out change didn't really switch that much because most of our people stayed 25 to 30 years anyway. What we saw since 2014, not so much a difference in recruiting. We're still getting people that want to come in, but one of the things, and in fact, I was in the governor's office back then with Governor Bevin and his chief of staff, and they said, well, when does somebody usually leave the fire department? I said, 25 to 30 years. And they said, no, like not to retirement, but when do they actually when do you see people turnover? And I said, 25 to 30 years. Because nobody leaves. I mean, literally, if you look back to when I was hired in 2001, the people that have quit, that haven't just retired, the people who quit, you can count them on two hands. It just doesn't happen. They love the job that much. We started to see a change then after 2014 because now people, rather than having the promise of a pension at the end, they came here, they get a lot of experience, they can get a lot of certifications, and then they can sell that to a higher bidder. So what we've seen in the past 10 years is we're starting to see turnover, which we never saw before. Like people just didn't leave, but now we're starting to see people say, well, why would I stay when I can? And the thing about the Tier 3 is that all the money that's put in there, the employer match, and the money that it makes, once you've got 5 years and you're vested, you can take all of that with you wherever you go. So rather than like somebody like me that got a degree while I was here, got all these certifications, I had to give back to the city that invested in me, and I'm giving it back. These other people will invest in them, and they're like, thanks, see ya, and they're leaving. And we're not seeing that in massive numbers, but we are seeing it.
You talked a little bit about the mindset of a firefighter and how they love the job. I want to talk about the bridge rescue. Talk about the mindset that goes into performing that kind of rescue and the training that goes into that.
Sure. I can speak to that on a couple different ways. One, I was on that company years ago as a sergeant back around like 2005 to 2009. So I did a lot of that type of work. And I was there on the bridge then, but I just watched our guys do amazing work that day. I will tell you that is one of the least dangerous things that we do. Although it looks fantastical and it makes, if that had happened at midnight instead of at lunchtime, we probably wouldn't be talking about it because you wouldn't have had all of the news media, and it was perfect timing to capture that moment. And it was an incredible rescue. That's a once in a lifetime type thing. We practice that, what's called a pickoff. We practice that all the time. And in fact, when I was there, we always imagined it was going to be like a window cleaner on a building. So, okay, if somebody's trapped, we've got to get to them. How do we do it? Well, we set up a system. You either, lower down to them. If you can get up to them, you probably can't because they're too high. So to do a pickoff, you lower down. And then do you bring the victim back up, or do you lower them down to the ground and drop them off? In this case, as you're talking over the water, we're like, well, we don't want to lower down to the water. We're going to bring them right back up. But we did have divers and swiftwater techs in boats in the water just in case anybody fell. Obviously, you saw how precarious that truck was where it was hanging just in case that went off. We had people ready to go in if the rescue got to that. But so when you think about the mindset, I know that TVs and movies make it look amazing. There's not a lot of bravery involved for our firefighters because we're not scared in the first place, which is probably something wrong with our mindset. Because if you think about it, courage happens when you're facing something that scares you and you overcome fear to do that. Most of the firefighters are people that are kind of adrenaline junkies. They like action, they like adventure, they like active lifestyles. So when you see something like that, they're like, cool, this is a chance to go to work. This is great. I've been training for this all this time and we finally get to do it. And if that, again, that's a once in a career type of opportunity to put those skills to use. But as far as the mentality, it's just, hey, this is the job and now I get to do it.
This question is a reminder that people do conflate the first responder, public safety folks together. Thunder is one of the largest soft targets for a terrorist attack. Any lessons learned from the New Orleans attack, and how do you all approach that generally anyhow?
Sure. So, and I will say that we are, as much as we might rib each other between the police and fire and EMS, I will take that that conflation at any time because we love our brothers and sisters, whether it's fire, EMS, police. When you look at large incidents like Thunder or Derby, any of the other big, Bourbon and Beyond, the big events that come to here. And again, these are all within the city of Louisville. So again, that's the Louisville Fire Department. We start like Derby planning and Thunder planning late fall, early winter. And that involves not only police, fire, and EMS here locally, that involves the ATF, that involves the FBI, that involves the military, that involves the state police. So you have multiple agencies that are looking at and constantly talking about and imagining, what do we need to be scared of? What do we need to be worried about? What do we need to protect against? Because once again, we don't want the incident to happen in the first place. When you think about Thunder over Louisville down there at the water front, you'll see that the New Orleans style, which we've also seen in Europe a couple of times, we have barricades set up to stop that. If you get near the Derby, on Derby Day, you see barricades throughout to make sure that people can't pass through there. And that's really, it's the constant balance that you have in a free society and trying to keep it as safe as you possibly can. You want the citizens, you want everybody to be able to come and enjoy a time as best they can. We're going to do everything that we can and take every risk necessary to help keep people safe. And we're going to continue to do that and hopefully just continue to plan. But I cannot sit here and promise you that we can keep everybody safe. This isn't a perfect world.
Here's a nice provocative question. Have standards been relaxed for DEI reasons?
So it's interesting. We were just having this conversation earlier. No, standards not relaxed at all. I have been very open since day one that I have a priority, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I have a priority about trying to recruit women and minorities. Because we have a dearth of females especially. We're pretty good on our minority numbers when you look at, the makeup of Louisville, Jefferson County and how we're doing that. And we need to continue that. But again, I think about our communities that just don't think about it in the first place. And so I want to reach into those communities and to those pockets of our population, females, minorities, immigrants, et cetera, that just haven't traditionally thought about the fire service. A lot of times you look, I'm an outlier. So many of our firefighters have a parent that was a firefighter, a brother, a sister, an uncle, somebody that's a firefighter. I knew the fire department existed, but until a friend of mine literally had an application, this is back when they had paper applications, and stuck it in my hand and said, you should do this. That's how I was recruited. It wasn't something I thought of. So really, we're trying to reach out, because here's the thing about, you hear it all the time, oh, they're going to lower standards. We can't lower standards because the fire ground does not lower its standards. When you look at, the trench collapse, when you look at the Jevadan explosion, when you look at the bridge collapse, when you look at the Nulu fire, things like that, those standards don't change. And I am not going to hire somebody and get them killed just to make a headline. I'm going to keep our firefighters as safe as we can.
Quick follow-up question. What kind of person becomes a firefighter? Give us kind of your recruiting pitch here.
So I tell you, despite what you might think about the machismo, the adrenaline junkie, honestly, the best firefighter that we're looking at is somebody who's active, but somebody with empathy. Because that is the driving force that helps us do what we do, is empathy. To understand that there is somebody out there that needs help, and thanks to my training, thanks to everything I've been given by this department and by the traditions of this department, I am in a position to help them. That's what we are looking for, is if you think about, say, like a nurse or a school teacher that has that same type of empathy, that call for service, but they also, they spend some time like rock climbing or running or doing triathlons, that kind of a combination. That's what we're really looking for. We're looking for active people, but we need people, kindness and empathy. The stuff that your mom told you when you were a kid, that's what we're looking for, because ultimately we're here to serve the public and try to help people on their worst day.
Well, the follow-up to that, when you talk about activity and are you the oldest guy there?
No. In fact, my birthday was just a couple of days ago on the 17th. I turned 51. And I still, I run marathons, ultra marathons, still hit the gym on a regular basis. And I'm not even going into the fires anymore, as much as I miss it, and I wish I could. But no, that's not my job anymore. But no, we have quite a few people, but some that are older. You don't see a lot of people into their mid-50s and older, because for one, there's only so many spots like this that will get you out of, frontline firefighting. And the fact is, that's one of the reasons why you need that 20 to 25-year pension, is because you don't want 60 to 70-year-old firefighters trying to throw up ladders, drag hoses, wear 75 pounds of gear. And as some of our politicians that we brought down, and we'll do this again, and we'll invite some of the news media, or really anybody else that might want to join, we'll let you put on all the fire gear, throw some ladders, drag some hoses. But the thing is, once you do all of that and you're exhausted, that's when the job starts. Because now you've gotten there to where the emergency is, and then you have to start working. So yes, physical fitness is an attribute that is top-notch and necessary for us.
How many firefighters with your class are still there?
So I came in 2001. We had a class of about 38, and there are 10 of us left. And I know a couple of them said they're leaving this fall. So
You talked about the area that you serve, the old Louisville service area, and then outside of that are smaller city fire departments and even volunteer fire departments. The question is, why are the many fire departments not merged, and should they be?
So there really aren't any volunteers left in Jefferson County. This is there are Chapter 75 fire protection districts, which they can have volunteers, but talking to the other chiefs, there are very few of those left. And actually, Mayor Tonini might even be able to comment on that. I don't know that there's very many volunteers left in the county. No. So
There aren't volunteers that drive to the firehouse to get on a truck. They may man a firehouse in the evening, but
yeah. But even those numbers compared to 15, 20, 30 years ago are much smaller. So yeah, you're looking at several fire protection districts, and you have City of Shively. If you're asking my personal opinion, I think we should have one countywide fire department with fire-based EMS. I think that if you have that one department, you can allocate your resources better to make sure that wherever you are within Louisville Metro, that you can have the protection that you need. It's not going to happen overnight. We need to respect everyone and every area to make sure they get the service that they expect. But I do think that if with one fire department, we could do a little better job of that, of allocating those resources. And that would mean, and that doesn't mean a takeover. There's anybody that don't quote on that, because some of our resources would go away. Because when you look at the borderlines, we could probably better serve the entire community if we moved some of those and kind of fluctuate in between. What we have is a social vulnerability index that we have to concern with to make sure that the resources are there to protect those folks. And then when you look at our, I mentioned earlier, that target hazard, when you look at our specific hazards like Rubbertown, which is out in PRP, that they need help, they need protection out there just in case something goes really bad. So we want to allocate those sources as best we can.
Is that beginning to happen in a way? Because I know there are a number of small city fire departments that have merged together.
Yes. It has happened mostly in the county. So if you look, 30 years ago, there was about 19 or 20 small fire protection districts, fire departments, and now they're down to 8. So they continue. Anchorage Middletown is now the 4th largest fire department in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And they are about 240 people or so, 240 members, I should say, for the Anchorage Middletown area. So, that is merged, several that have come together there. So yeah, you've got a lot of fire departments that existed years ago that no longer do, like Black Mud, Lake Dreamland, that have merged into. And so that is slowly moving. And as I said, too, we get together on the regular basis with the other fire chiefs with those county fire departments to make sure that we're cross-training with each other, make sure that we're facing those. Like I said, despite the fact that we don't have the one fire department to do it, we're just doing it together. And we're making sure that, hey, if this is a hazard over here that we need to worry about, how are we facing it together and working together to make sure we're providing that protection.
You mentioned the Nulu fire. Do you know the cause, and can you give people the background of that pretty big fire?
So I can't comment on the cause. That's a question for the arson department to handle. But it was that is a type of newer construction that terrifies us. It's called podium construction. Basically, if you look over on campus, there's quite a few of them like that. You have a first floor that is block. Oftentimes it's a garage or offices, and then they put stick-built construction up to 5 or 6 stories above that. And that building, had it been about a foot taller, would have required sprinklers in the attics and in void spaces, and it did not have that. So once you have fire that gets in the void spaces, you're done. And as I was standing outside of that and watching as our companies, they're trying to get up into the roof because they had run the attic, and they're starting to get to it and try to effect extinguishment on that, we could see that fire was running under the floors underneath them. So immediately we're like, get out as quick as you can. And about 7 minutes after we got everybody evacuated, it started collapsing.
What is stick built?
Stick build is traditional, just like wood frame construction. So if you think about like stick build, that's like a typical new construction house is going to have wood 2x4s, maybe some plywood walls and ceilings and things like that. And the other thing that they do is lightweight truss construction. Lightweight trusses are good until they're not. It's a way that you can have a structure that can hold more weight than traditional construction. However, in traditional construction, if you look at like my house, it's 112 years old in Old Louisville. If one part of the floor fails, it's going to be fine. If one part of the roof fails, it's going to be fine. In the newer truss construction, if one part of that truss fails, the entire system fails. So you'll see an entire floor pancake down. You'll see an entire roof come down all at once. And with that type of construction, we have to be a lot faster. If the fire starts getting a foothold at all, it's going to collapse and it's going to kill firefighters, which is why once we started seeing that, we got all of our people out. And unfortunately, we lost the structure, but we didn't lose any people.
Do you think they made it 1 foot shorter to avoid putting in sprinklers?
I'll let you take that guess, Mr. Congressman.
But it does lead to another question. There are a number of new apartment complexes going up around Metro Louisville. Is that worrisome? How closely do you watch that construction?
We watch it, and we watch it as close as we can, and we make sure that we're involved so that we make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. I can tell you that there was one that was going up on campus probably 15 years ago that was trying to, and we're talking about student housing, and they were trying to avoid putting sprinklers. And our Fire Prevention Bureau put a stop to that. Again, when you hear about fire prevention stopping, this is why they do that, and made sure that they actually had sprinklers involved in all of that area. But if you look at something like the new Lou fire, it burned exactly to code.
Louisville Fire and LMPD seem to have very different cultures. Is that true? What insights can you give into how these two different departments work together?
So I would say, different cultures, certainly to an extent, just because of the kind of the mindset of a law enforcement officer and what that requires and the unique hazards that they face compared to the fire. And I will give a shout out to my brothers and sisters in blue. I was on a scene one time years ago, and we had a very irate group of people. Police were there, we were there. We always work together very, very well. We have a lot of love between us. But these people were mad, and they were yelling at us and screaming at us. We got back up on the fire engine, and they looked at me. I was a captain at the time. They're like, "Cap, how come those cops didn't do anything with those people yelling and screaming?" And I kind of laughed. I said, "You have to understand." I said, that's background noise to them. They hear that a lot. I said, just because they weren't thanking you for your service and telling you what a great firefighter you were, I said, that's the kind of stuff they deal with day in and day out. The police are called, they show up on maybe a domestic and they save somebody from an abuser, and then suddenly they're vilified for breaking up a family. I said, whereas we show up on a fire, we kick down the front door, we drag hoses through the house and spray water over everything, and they call us heroes. So I understand, and I know my friend here, Deputy Mayor James, that's been there, he gets it, that, so there is a slightly different mindset too, the hazards that we're looking at. Their hazards oftentimes are going to be, is this person a threat to me? Where our hazards, we're looking at more general. It's like, okay, was this building construction a threat? Is this rail line a threat? Is the way that this road goes a threat? Whereas, the police are looking at a very different set. But as far as how we work together, When I was still on the company, I was there at close to U of L. I got a good relationship with all the police that had that beat, made sure that they knew anytime they wanted, they were welcome in the firehouse. If just to have a quiet place, a microwave, a refrigerator, or a place where they could take off their gun belt to use the restroom safely. That we try to make sure that we're all working for the same city. We have the same employer, which ultimately is the community. It's the people that we serve.
Now, here's the voyeur question of all time. Would you walk us through the strategy involved in fighting a fire? From the time you hear it, you get the alarm.
Sure. So if you, and we'll make this a typical, what we would call a bread and butter residential structure fire in a house. So when you first come up, first of all, throw all your gear on, you're in the apparatus and out the door in less than a minute. You're rushing across the city to wherever the call came from. It's a house. As you're going there, you're thinking, okay, are we going to be first in or are we going to be second in? Because on any residential fire, we have 4 engines and 2 trucks. Again, engines have hose and water. Trucks have tools and ladders. But again, the biggest, most important thing they all have is people, firefighters. So the first engine is going to take a line, stretch it in to try to extinguish the fire. The first truck is going to go inside to search for victims, search for the seat of the fire. Sometimes when you don't know where the fire is, despite movies and TV, if you want to know what it looked, that's why we don't really make for good television. Because if you want to just like shut your eyes really close, put your hand over it, and put another hand over it, that's what it looks like inside of a fire. As you're crawling in there, you have to listen. You can sometimes hear the fire, or if it starts getting really hot on this side of your face, go that way, because that means that's where the fire is, because you just can't see anything. And so you're feeling your way through. But that initial, when you get there, you're looking at the house, say, okay, do I see any fire or do I just see smoke? What's the smoke look like? This is classes that we teach in reading smoke, the type of smoke, the color of the smoke, the volume with which it's pushing tells you a lot about what's going on inside of that structure. It tells you something about what's burning as well. If the smoke looks like it's breathing, like if it's puffing out and pulling back, that means that that house needs to get ventilated, because if you open it up, it's going to take a big suck of breath and then everything's going to ignite really quick. So you're thinking about all of these things. You're thinking about possible victims when you look at that house. So what time of day is it? Is there a car here? Is there a chance that there are victims in here? And if there are, where might they be? Because again, you can either remove the victim from the fire or remove the fire from the victim. And this is a coordinated attack. As I've mentioned, that first engine is going to stretch a line to go in to extinguish the fire. The first truck is doing search and rescue, as well as putting a couple people on the roof to cut a hole and basically make a chimney, so that all those superheated gases and all the toxic gases have a way to get out. And that coordinates with that attack. So as you're extinguishing that fire, a piece of water, if you imagine whatever that piece, the droplet, a gallon, whatever, when it turns into steam, when it hits that fire, it expands 1,600 times. So if you imagine a drop of water, that as it becomes a drop of steam, that steam is 1,600 times bigger. So that needs to push somewhere, and we want to give it an avenue to go. We want it to go out and up. We have another engine that'll come to the rear to make sure we're looking at it, so we're getting it from all sides. The next truck that comes in is going to handle utilities to make sure that if this is a gas-fed fire, there's no more natural gas pumping in here. To make sure as we're searching around and grabbing on things that the power is cut to the house, so we're not going to electrocute one of our firefighters that's in there searching. We're going to do additional, we're going to have police that are called to the scene to help us with traffic control. We're going to have EMS standing by in case there is a victim or in case one of our firefighters is hurt. Unfortunately, that's something that we deal with. Just this past year, we've had a couple of different firefighters that have gotten burned. It happens. It's a dangerous job. We are also going to coordinate with LG&E. If maybe sometimes we have power lines down. So if you got that, you might have loose part of the house because the line that came in to feeding the house, it burned off and it fell, but now you have a live power line. Pop it in the yard while you're trying to get in here to execute your job. So it's a lot of things that go into it, but basically it's getting in there, searching, find the seat of the fire, extinguish it as quickly as you can. The way that you behave in the first say 1 minute on the scene will have a lot to do with if you're going to be there for another 5 minutes or another 5 hours. So yeah, you have to be swift, you have to be aggressive, you have to get inside to where the fire actually is and put it out. You cannot fight it from the exterior. You can't just surround and drown, because then you're going to lose the whole house and possibly the houses next door as well.
Thanks, Chief. This is, Lawrence, please, one more, and I think I know we have probably about dozens more, but thanks.
I could
Thanks,
do this
Chief.
all day. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think the fact that so few firefighters are seriously injured fighting these fires is testament to the kind of training that you do. When's the last time you lost a firefighter? It's been a number of years, hasn't it?
So in my career, we've had 3 line-of-duty deaths, 2 of them to cancer, 1 to a stroke. Medical emergencies and cancer are actually one of our biggest killers. And if you think about all of the nasty stuff that you deal with when we go into a fire, it's not, we wear our face masks. Believe it or not, lung cancer is not statistically higher in firefighters than it is throughout the general public. Because we do a pretty good job of protecting our lungs. But what ends up happening is all that stuff, that soot, the incomplete particles of combustion get stuck on our skin, it gets into our gear, it permeates into our body, it ends up getting down. So what we see is in like the colorectal, intestinal, brain cancer, things like that, firefighters are about 2 to 3 times more likely to get those cancers than the general public. We had, it was a recently retired firefighter, Dave Pauly, that died. But as far as on duty, it was Tim Groft back in 2017. A young man, 38 years old, had a little boy, Lincoln. And he contracted cancer and died. The last traumatic line of duty death was Strawn Nutter back in 1993. But since that time, yes, we do take our safety very seriously. We just did have a firefighter on Christmas Day, Christmas Eve going into Christmas Day, that was pretty seriously burned. He spent about a week at U of L Hospital in the burn unit. It was backs of his arms that got very badly burned. He got kind of stuck in an attic. But again, it was not life-threatening. It was just a matter, burns are a nasty, nasty thing. And when you get a deep tissue burn, the potential for any type of infection is why that he had to spend a little extra time in the hospital. But we do take it seriously, and we're not afraid to look back at what we did and what we did wrong and where we screwed up and how we can make sure that we do better next time.
Well, on behalf of everybody in this room, thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence. Now I have nothing to say on a final note. So thank you all for being here, Chief. Thanks very much. And hopefully I'll see you all on February 13th. Stay warm. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.